little health and a little wealth and a lot of love.
Elevator speech off the rip. So my name is Chase DeCrawl. I live in Savannah, Georgia, the most beautiful city on the East Coast.
We second that.
Yeah, well, it is an underrated but very much beloved place that's exceptionally expensive to live at. And, you know, what I do for a living is beneficial, for the income range. I am in medical device sales, was, professional, college athlete, was able to get into this via luck more so than any other skill. But, I sell medical devices with, diabetes, breast pumps, wound care devices, wound vacs, bed alternators, different, respirators. I don't necessarily need to know every single solitary thing. I more or less go in with the clinicians, with the hospital systems, with the individuals and figure out where's this stuff getting held up from patients that really need care. They really need their supplies. They need these things to go through. And my job is to make it less of a burden on the patient and, the clinician, giving them an avenue in order to send those things. So the rewards are beneficial. The stresses are really high. But, kind of lost my train of thought of where to go with it. But yeah.
Yeah. So one thing that you said is guys, I want you guys to know this. Chase is an ex-NFL football player.
That's the rumor.
And it's a true rumor. This dude used to play NFL football. So I have someone who's an ex-football player on the show who turned medical sales, who also had a stint in politics. And so
it's not over. It's not over. It's not over. It's not over.
We'll get there because that's part of the financial analysis.
Yeah.
Let's tease the audience. Let's don't give it all away. But I think it's important to know that because you were making like $15,000 a week as an ex-NFL football player.
Oh, look, yeah. There's a lot. What I will say is there's a lot that's not known. When you break down numbers and you like to look at numbers, micro economics is fascinating when you look at NFL and NBA teams. NBA teams are smaller in scale where you have 62-man roster with an NFL team. The amount of cap space that, the guys who make stupid amounts of money that we read about, 4 or 5 guys on 63 men. The other ones have to make up the rest of that. And that's, day-to-day guys that come in, they either prove it or don't prove it, move on to the next, move on to the next, move on to the next, move on to the next one. And, it transitions well into sales because that's essentially what it is. How well are you able to do for me right now? How are you able to do that for me?
And that's why you got into sales, and I think you're really, really good at sales. And I hate to say sales because a lot of people have an icky feeling about sales. But my thing is I feel like you put products in places where people need them.
Mm-hmm.
And then you educate people basically that to let them know they have this need. And one thing about your story, I definitely want to share with listeners, why medical sales,
So type 1 diabetic, I was diagnosed at 7, with type 1 diabetes. And it was, a really great athlete growing up. And, gifted is an understatement because, just was able to do things that no one else was able to do.
Where's the camera? He's not lying. This man is gifted.
But I was able to do things and, I was gifted in regards with judo. So judo is what I first got into other than skateboarding and bicycling because I'd doing backflips off of curb jumps that we had around there. Just nonsensical things, doing backflips in the pools off of different things. My parents were like, we need to get this kid into, some sort of sports. And there was a great avenue, which was judo. And judo was, exceptionally good because everyone that was teaching me was an Olympic level athlete. My sensei, John Pereira, was world renowned, he left Brazil because Brazil, I guess, boycotted the Olympics the year that he would compete. He was a world champion 5 times in a row. And on top of that was going to go to the Olympics, but Brazil boycotted the Olympics. So he left Brazil and came to America to teach judo. And that was my sensei.
That's awesome.
That guy. And even so young, Brett, really, really young kid was able to, get into, sports, but that was my passion. That's what I really, really liked to do. And contracting diabetes, the medical industry at the time was like, you can't play sports. Right. My parents were like, you're going to have to live at home with us. And I'm like, that's not happening.
Right.
And, was able to transition that negative aspect into, just barreling through and just making things end up working. And, technology kind of followed up there.
Too, I know you. So, what inspired you to get into medical sales was because you have that ailment. That's something you can't control, type 2, right? Which is very different from type 1. And so I know Emma's not here today. She explained type 1, type 2, and we'll probably do that in a future episode, which you have some good examples of that. But I do want to move on to get into the financial side of this. But I think it's inspiring to understand that you were ex-NFL player, you got into medical sales to help people, and you really want to focus on diabetes to help those people because it's a passion of yours. You know what it's like because you live it.
Yeah.
And I've been around you. I know when that thing goes off, you need some orange juice, or when Chase is grumpy and the whole entire room, Chase is in a bad mood, the whole entire room is going to be in a bad mood. That's just kind of how his energy kind of permeates the group a little bit. I'm not knocking you, that's some power there.
Yeah. I mean,
but it makes sense. Like, I get it.
I'm blessed that I have friends well enough to know what's going on when things are going on, because things can go really poorly really quickly.
And I used to take offense to that when we first were entering our friendship. I was like, God, this dude was awesome. He's like on cloud nine, like broing out, like, yeah. And then the next thing I'm like, ugh. And then like everyone's around me is like, no, he has diabetes. Like his blood sugar is like spiked down. I say, oh. So now when he's in this mood, he's like, Chase, do you need some orange juice? Do you need to sleep? Do you need food? Like, well, sure.
We'll get to the financial stuff, I promise. But like in regards to like diabetes and all that stuff, there was an interesting, like, it's tough to get people to learn. What I learned to do is describe it like an injury. If you break your leg, you're not going to be running around immediately after, right? It's like, you're a low blood sugar, even a high blood sugar that is an immediate, needs immediate assistance, in order to correct that, because that's not normal. Right. Normal bodies don't do that. And it freaks out when it's going wrong.
Right.
So, it just takes 20 minutes or, the right planning in order to get that stuff done. Right. But, doing that with, contact sports without a Dexcom, without like CGMs,
I would love to have you on the podcast. I think we should table that for now, but let's have you on the podcast on a health episode. And I'd love to understand, like, what is it to be and live like a type 2 diabetic, especially
type 1 diabetic. So type 2s are probably 9 out of 10 diabetics are type 2 diabetics. Right. And there's nothing wrong with it. There's just a different, and they're very much the same, but they're very much different. And not to trivialize the difficulties that go with type 2 diabetes, because there are many. But in type 1, there's a certain amount of finality that, like, you need to take insulin, you need to eat this, and when you do eat this, something will happen, and so you have to accommodate for that. Whereas, like, in type 2, layman's terms types of things, there's a delayed response in what's going on through your body, and you can help your body, do better things by eating better, or you can help your body by taking, medications that then reinvigorate that stuff. And that's not all of it. That's dumbed down completely.
Yeah. But we'll talk. I think we should talk about that on a health episode for sure, because I think it's so important. I had to glaze over that topic, but I think it's important to understand your makeup, because you are somebody who is inspired by that to help other diabetics.
Well, the reason why I was able to even play sports is because of a sales rep. So I had a family practice Dr. Lascano, and Dr. Lascano, is like, old school guy. Just I gotta say old school. I was 7 years old. I don't remember, but basically, the sales rep had came in and was talking about some new things, which was an insulin pump. An insulin pump was kind of outside of the realm of possibility, and they were looking for people to test these things out. And I, was someone that went up to like Yale, and went up to the medical devices where they put me in, clinical trial. I mean, with medical devices is different than clinical trials, but they had tests. So I went and they gave me a freaking, what was that little toy, the Furbies? They gave me a Furby for like a 72-hour like analysis to go over my blood sugars with like insulin pumps and stuff like that. So, but I mean, it was a lot of risk. And, my parents was like, here you go, sent me over there to make sure that I, got the best medical care possible. But like, it was basically a test to go into this insulin pump thing.
Helped you, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's probably, like, I didn't know that part of your story. So that's good to let the kind of viewers understand why you were into medical sales.
With a little health and a little wealth and a lot of love, that's the life that we live. Suits and scrubs.